My name is Rainey Bench, and I'm the Curator of Education for the Abbe Museum in Bar Harbor, Maine. And the mission of the Abbe Museum is to inspire new learning about the Wabanaki Nations with every visit. We are part of the Big Read, Adventures of Tom Sawyer, this year, and we're really excited about that opportunity because it helps us expand our mission, learning about Native peoples, both historic and present, and the relationships that they have with non-Native people. And while our mission is solely focused on the Native people of Maine, by being able to participate in the Big Read and looking at the characterization of Injun Joe in the Adventures of Tom Sawyer, we're able to kind of compare and contrast what was happening nationally and the understanding of Indian people nationally from the 1860s to the 1920s, and then look at what that meant here in Maine, because that was a very different situation here in the relationships that were formed and the idea of what an Indian was or wasn't. And so by having that ability to compare and contrast, we can really open up new conversations with new audiences that we wouldn't have reached in other ways. And we can expand our mission to look at how Maine is unique, how the Native cultures have continued to survive and thrive in this environment, and the ways that they've been able to kind of control their own, the perception of themselves to the wider community.
Tell us a little bit more about the groups that you've been meeting with.
Sure. We have been working with students, so far grades 3 through 5th, but we also have programs 6th through 8th coming up. And through that, we look at the stereotypes of Native people, positive, negative, and neutral stereotypes, where they come from, how it is that they can be damaging to Native populations, and our ability to relate to one another as a community or a nation. And we can take those stereotypes that come from a very specific place out in the Great Plains during the Plains Indian Wars in the 1860s through the 1890s, and then also through the Indian Removal Act in the 1830s to the late 1850s, both of which really inspired Twain's writing and characterization of Indians. And so we can look at the fact that he was influenced by those events, but that was also a national influence. And so what did that mean, and what impact does that have here in Maine? And so we can introduce that to students through the issues of stereotypes, and then we can actually look at real artifacts. We can look at advertising material. We can look at the fact that photographs of Native people here in Maine from the late 1800s are wearing these really big feathered bonnets that came out of the Great Plains, because that's what an Indian was supposed to look like. And they're using this for marketing. And where does this come from, and why is this important? And then we look at, why does this matter today? And a lot of times people think that Indian stereotypes are overblown, or people are overly sensitive to the mascot issue or Indians in marketing. But when you all of a sudden to see how layered it is and how prevalent these kinds of imagery are still in our society, then all of a sudden kids can start to see why this influence that has lingered is so important. And then we're also working with adults, kind of in the same manner, looking at the formation of the idea, national idea of what an Indian identity is and what that means. And then we can look a little bit more critically at Mark Twain and his biases that he brought in from his experiences as a child, and then also in Nevada, kind of working with or being exposed to Native people there. And through his journalism work during the Plains Indian Wars, we can look at how you can trace actually his understanding of Indians through that, where he starts to kind of intentionally create characters that will destroy the romantic image of Indians that were presented by James Fenimore Cooper or Henry Longfellow, or authors like that, kind of contemporaries.